Hello gamers, have you ever been scrolling through Steam or your game vendor of choice when you come across something that takes you completely off guard? Well, by me writing this you may have guessed that I have recently gone through this event, and by the gameplay you may be able to tell that it's an Assassin's Creed game. Now, I am aware, or at least thought I was aware, of all the Assassin's Creed games, including the likes of the Bloodlines game and the DLC and the DS games, but I have never heard of a game by the name of Assassin's Creed Liberations, a game that was released for the PS Vita, a console handheld device that I also basically forgot the existence of. But I only found out about this game when I recently bought an Assassin's Creed bundle, and there it was, an Assassin's Creed game I have never heard of sitting in my library waiting for me to download it and discover what Liberations is, to see if the game is forgotten for a reason, or is there something hidden below that could change the Assassin's Creed series. Well, there's only one way to find out, and that is to install the game and start playing it. So let's figure that out. So to get started, what is Assassin's Creed Liberations? Well, as mentioned before, it was originally released as a PS Vita exclusive game. The game coming out back in 2012 as a companion game to Assassin's Creed 3. But as you may have been able to tell, I am not playing this game on a PS Vita. I do not, nor have I ever owned a PS Vita, as the game was remastered and re-released on PC and other consoles under the name Assassin's Creed Liberations HD. But the original game and the remaster were both made by Ubisoft Sofia's studio. Shout out to Bulgaria and my boy Tsar Boris. Was he a good guy? I don't know, to be honest. He did help Bulgarian Jews during World War II, but he was also part of the Axis Alliance. But I like him in Hoi Force, so this has gone very off topic quickly. All that to say, I do like the fact that the teams were kept the same between both projects. As I don't know what Ubisoft is doing at the moment, I'm surprised they didn't give this to some studio, like whatever the studio is that did the GTA Definitive Edition remasters, which are not definitive in the slightest. So what direction did Ubisoft Sofia take the game in? Well, as I mentioned, the game is a companion game to AC3. It takes place around the same time in the 18th century, Colonial Louisiana. At least that is where a bulk of the game takes place, with small expeditions to Mexico, all the way up to New York to spend some time with the wooden plank known as Connor Kenway. The setting of Louisiana being different enough to AC3's New York, with the Louisianians, that cannot be the correct way to say that, being under control of the French until it was given to the Spanish after the 7-Year War, which is a big change, and something like that can change a lot about a city, which we also get to see in game as it takes place during the handover, with the people rioting against the new Spanish rule at first. But now I want to talk about the game's it factor. That being the game's persona system. It turns out some of the non-mainline stuff can really go wild with trying new things out, as I just covered the fear system in my Jack the Ripper video, and now this. Also, I'm playing a lot of Assassin's Creed lately. Something's wrong with me. But anyways, to set up the persona system, there's a little bit of knowledge you need to know about who you play as in Liberations, that being one Aveline. Aveline? Listen, the names in this game from our situation in the world are very French, and I am awful at any language that's not English. I speak 2 languages, English and Australian, so I mean, I'm going to try my best, but a lot of the times I'm going to also try to avoid using names. But she is the daughter of a rich French merchant. He was very much a part of the elite high society of Colonial Louisiana. However, Aveline's mother was a slave who had a relationship with Aveline's father. However, it would seem that Aveline's father, Philip, greatly loved both Aveline and her mother, as it seems her father took both of them out of slavery. However, when Aveline was young, her mother either left her or was killed. We are unsure at the start. But these two sides of her, being raised as an elite yet having the appearance and heritage of a slave, also allows Aveline to blend in with many groups of people, thus the persona system, which allows Aveline to dress up as either a slave, a lady, or assassin, with each class having its own advantages and disadvantages. As Lady Aveline is very limited in both her weapons and her movement, as wearing the dress removes her ability to climb or even run, much like Evie in that Assassin's Creed Syndicate Meet the Queen mission. The only weapons she can carry are her hidden blades, and later in the game she unlocks an umbrella gun. But the lady has the advantages of being able to be the most undetectable of all the personas. The guards are more likely to turn a blind eye to her wrong actions. And Aveline can also charm the guards out of her way if they do not turn a blind eye. The slave outfit is also limited on weapons, however returning the full range of movement to Aveline. And she can blend in more with the crowds of the slaves around the city. However, since Aveline is a slave, the guards are a lot more likely to raise suspicion onto her, even if she's just walking down the street normally. And then there is the assassin outfit. This is her assassin robes, basically, being fully decked out with all the gear she could need to complete any mission she has been sent on. But assassins are less in the shadows in the Louisianan heat, being wanted basically 24/7. Now, by wanted, what do I mean by that? And the lady system not gain it, the slave system gain easily, and the assassins never been able to get rid of it. Well, a better term for the wanted system may be notoriety of her personas, and there are also some ways that you can lower the notoriety of any needed persona. Not wearing the persona will slowly lower its heat over time. Then with the assassins, you need to bribe magistrates. With the slave, you need to remove wanted posters, and as the lady, you just charm more guards. And it is also important to add on the persona topic that there is also a bunch of quote-unquote changing rooms that Aveline can buy around the city, allowing her to change clothes out and about instead of returning to one of her homes. And I think this is an amazing system, and I'm surprised nothing like this was ever implemented into a mainline game. Apart from maybe Ubisoft didn't want Assassin's Creed to start to feel like Hitman with a lot of different outfits. I mean, if that is the reason, however, it's stupid, but then looking at Ubisoft in current times, stupid's sort of their thing at the moment. And then there is one more thing that Liberation did differently to other AC games. It could have been another amazing idea if it had been implemented in a better way. That being Citizen E. So to explain it, in the modern day you are playing an Abstergo game on Abstergo's newest line of consoles. There are no actual modern day segments, but since Abstergo controls what you see, the history you are playing, obviously being painted in somewhat of an Abstergo/Templar friendly light, there is a hacker group that hack into Abstergo's latest console line, adding a little glitch bug code that allows you to see the true events. And to do that, you need to assassinate an NPC, which the hacking group has called Citizen E, who will show up a couple times in the game. Unfortunately, the Citizen E event's very well highlighted. I kind of wish that there was a chance that you could miss a Citizen E encounter sometimes. I understand you can't do that for the main story, but in the game's side quests or something like that, or lesser main story missions, that give you the ability to somewhat experience a different story from your friends, which would be interesting and give you something to talk about. Instead of what could have been a cool idea, just really ends up feeling like an extra unneeded step within the game required to complete it. and it really could have been something interesting, as I've always wondered in lore, why does Abstergo Entertainment make games about assassins when they are clearly fighting against the assassins? Maybe it's explained in a comic book though, they do like to explain big things in comic books. Because why would you finish a big event in a game when you can do it in said comic book? But that's not the only feature that the game has that I had some issues with. Now in Black Flag there's a boat trading / merchant minigame. A feature that was seen first in this game, as Aveline's father runs a merchant trading company, one that Aveline takes over the daily runnings of during the game, giving you a merchant running minigame where you can buy and control ships, running trade routes, buying goods in one port and selling them in another to turn a profit. And I did really enjoy this minigame. I sort of enjoy like economic manager games sometimes. I spent like 3 hours just playing the minigame whilst I was working on another video. As I mentioned, little minigames like this can be very enjoyable. However, my biggest problem was that after I'd put in that 3 hours of work into the minigame, I came back to it after I'd left the trading table and gone out to do a couple missions. This wasn't even a relaunch of the game. And all the boats I had brought had disappeared, resetting all of my progress. I don't know if this is something to do with my save being buggy, or maybe it's a known problem with the remaster, but when you lose hours worth of work, it can be hard to want to label the merchant trading as enjoyable or even worth playing. Unless you want the extra money to upgrade your weapons, that is. But even after buying the upgraded weapons, they seem to not do much, as I barely found myself using the pistol in the game anyways, and the sword upgrade does slightly increase the damage output of the swords, but like in other AC games from the time, you can easily fight without having a high upgraded gear, as all you need to do is counter, then hit the insta-kill button on all your enemies. And the enemies that you can't do that, it's usually counter, break defense, then kill. On the topic of gameplay, which combat kind of is, I would normally give up a little section of a video to talk about gameplay and how the game itself controls if I find any weird major issues I have with controls. But I feel this game, it isn't very important. The game is basically a better looking Vita port. So yes, it does not feel as fluid in the movement as previous and future installments. But I mean, it is only a remaster, not a remake. And it was originally meant to run on a handheld console with the power of a Nokia 3310. And the screen the same size of an outer Samsung flip screen. So I wasn't expecting much. It's like you'd see in the gameplay, there's bigger checkpoints around so they're more visible on the smaller screen, and a bunch more other things to cater towards that. But I don't feel it makes sense to go through looking at all of this and sort of ragging on why they would make these design choices, because it's obvious that they would have been made to set the limitations for the console that they had at the time. However, something that I find a lot harder to accept as a limitation of the game's original hardware it was meant to run on is the sound design within the game. It is just painfully awkward at best, horrendously bad more commonly, with some scenes being horribly designed, with the sound of Aveline's walking being silent, to there being no music, audio cues sounding horrible or just being wrong. It really much feels like give it your first take and then go home.
Farewell and adieu to your fair Spanish ladies. Farewell and adieu to your ladies of Spain. Spain is the only thing I am. I am Carlos Dominguez.
We meet again.
Do we? All three of you look familiar. But you're all welcome back to my cabin. I've manhood for...
I don't think...
Or we can consort right here.
What do you know about Rafael Joaquin de Ferrer?
I'm afraid he's not invited.
What's your business with him?
He pays for transport to and from New Orleans. That's all I do. Transport the things and get paid. Things, paid. Transport, paid. Back and forth and back.
What is he doing? Why New Orleans?
I do not know. Senor de Ferrer is a very secretive man.
Thank you for your time, Capitan.
But it did seemingly get better later into the game. Now that may have been because I ended up pulling up Spotify and just playing Enzo's Family on loop. So I mean, that's probably that actually. But now we can finally talk about the story of Aveline, a story that was longer than I expected for a handheld game, with the game taking me roughly 7 to 8 hours to complete, not counting my merchant minigame time. The game first opens with Aveline having a nightmare, which she has many nights. This being the day her mother vanished from her and her father's life. Awakening, Aveline gets to work doing what she does best, using her assassin skills, of which she was trained as from a very young age, without her father or stepmother's knowledge. Little creepy on the assassins on that part, taking a 13-year-old child with a family to train as an assassin in the bayou, but hey. And on this day, Aveline is going undercover as a slave at a local manor to find out why so many slaves are vanishing from this one property. So Aveline uses her slave persona to get into and make her way around the compound, where she finds a slave who has been beaten and abused by the guards. As Aveline helps her escape and even goes to her stepmother to help rehome her, as her stepmother may not know about her secret robes, but they do share the same thoughts around the feeling of slaves and emancipation. Aveline then gets word, with the changing of power between France and Spain, the Templars are wiggling their way into the higher echelons of Louisiana power. So Aveline gets herself into a party at the governor's residence, where she overhears the governor and a Templar talking about someone only known as the Company Man. But after getting to the governor and killing him, Aveline then has to run off to the bayou, as her master assassin was calling her, and the city is a little too hot for her to be in at the moment. Her assassin master having some issues with someone who's going around pretending to be Agate's master, Agate being Aveline's master. This person going around recruiting people to an unknown cause. So Aveline runs off to help Agate, while in the bayou she recruits the help of some smugglers in the area, where Aveline is able to kill her master's old master, where she learns that the Company Man is behind this as well. This is also the first part of the game where you are introduced to Citizen E, as this is where the Templars have truly started manipulating history. But Aveline then returns to New Orleans, having been gone for a couple years since the killing of the governor, and the city only seems to be on the edge of a powder keg, as the new laws, even getting the rich people starting to look for a reason to riot. However, inside of all this rioting, Aveline hears that even more people are disappearing. And at this point, it's not only slaves, but the poor and the labourers as well. Basically anyone not of the elite class. And after returning to the bayou, and seeing that it's even happening in the bayou, Aveline then finds the location of some slaves who are in prison awaiting a ship. As it turns out, seemingly a lot of them are agreeing to be taken and not being taken against their will, as there is the promise of work and freedom, and it's just one boat trip away in Mexico. So Aveline sneaks her way onto the ship and goes to Mexico, where she meets up with a familiar Templar face. the man she saw talking to the governor many years ago. And even though everyone seems happy, including the slaves, there is a darker side hiding beneath the surface, as the true reason to the Templars' involvement is revealed, as it turns out there is a precursor site here with two halves of a disc, the prophecy disc as it is called, and since it is precursor technology, it cannot be allowed to fall into the hands of the Templars. So Aveline takes one half of the disc where she can then run away. However, she runs into her mother, who had been working there for the last who knows how many years. It would seem she fled from the assassins, as her and Agate seem to have worked together in the past, and she seems to have some relation where she somewhat fears the assassins, even fearing her own daughter. Aveline then runs off with one half of the disc, returning to New Orleans, where the riots are now a distant memory of the past. Aveline, unsure where to go from here, then gets word that the Spanish and Vasquez, who she believes is the company man, so at this point I'm not going to try to say his name and I will refer to him as the company man, is trying to retake the now freed slave town in Mexico. So Aveline then rushes back to get the second half of the disc, taking it back to her home for safekeeping, where her and her mother somewhat reconcile their relationship. However, her mother staying in the slave town in Mexico. Once returning to New Orleans, Aveline finds out that her father's health has taken a turn for the worse, but her stepmother asks her to help with a slave named George. So Aveline gets him out of town and into the bayou, where he is given to revolutionary soldiers and heads up north to fight in the war up there. And as Aveline returns once again to New Orleans, she hears word that the company man is going to be at a private event, where she gets into her lady persona and ends up charming him into going somewhere a little more private after finding him at the event. When no one can see, she plunges her blade into his throat. When getting ready to leave the party, Vasquez, before his death, says that she's got it all wrong. The company man is no man but a woman. Oh, plot twist. But there is no time for Aveline to think about it at the moment, as her stepmother is waiting for her at the front of the party. It turns out her father has taken a turn even worse, dying whilst Aveline was at the ball. The next year was hard on Aveline, barely being her assassin self, when she gets a note asking her to head north to help out a brother in need, to help kill a Templar by the name of Officer Davis. And of course, Aveline may be needing another break from the city. She moves around a lot in this game, but maybe needing another break from the city, she heads up to New York, where you meet up with the one and only Connor, either your favourite or least favourite of the Subject 17 bloodline. But Connor helps Aveline to get into the fort that holds Officer Davis, who turns out to be the slave that Aveline helped free a year ago before her father's passing, when, after catching up with the fleeing Officer George Davis, Aveline tells him to tell her who the company man is, when Officer Davis says that the company man has been in her backyard the whole time. All she needs to do is open her eyes. The slave she went to her mother for help with ended up in Mexico. The slave she helped for her mother is a Templar in New York. Her stepmother is the company man. So she rushes home to confront her, not knowing how this would go. But it turns out her stepmother dearest expected this and had guards ready to control Aveline, until Aveline was able to escape back to the bayou, where she met up with Agate, who at this point was convinced that Aveline had turned on him, drugging Aveline as she had to fight her way through a bunch of dummy hallucinations before confronting Agate himself. where after winning the fight she tells Agate to leave and never return, as his years alone in the swamp have warped and changed his mind, more than even Aveline or Agate himself had thought. But before anything is able to happen, Agate throws himself off the tree hideout, preferring to die than leave the bayou. Unable to come to terms with some of the decisions he had made that has led to this point in the game. The next scene we see Aveline return to New Orleans, where she is shown giving the disc to her stepmother as Aveline utters the famous words, "May the Father of understanding guide us." And then the credits roll. Oh my god, they have done a Rogue before Rogue was what I was thinking. Right up until the hacker group comes in and tells you that's not quite right, as a Citizen E event appears and you kill Citizen E to see what really happened. Right after Aveline uttered those famous lines, for an Assassin's Creed fan that is, they attempt to use the disc as it doesn't work. Turns out it needs a piece of Aveline's necklace, a piece her mother stole many years ago, stealing it from most likely Agate or the assassins themselves. It probably tells you more in the game's collectible journals, but I did not enjoy this game enough to go around yet another Ubisoft open world collectathon to find out how this necklace got to Aveline. I will use headcanon to fill in the blanks. But after the device doesn't work, Aveline stands up against the Templars. She may have had a falling out with Agate, but she still believes in the Creed, killing the Templars in that room, including her stepmother. Then, after the Templars are dealt with, Aveline inserts her locket into the discs. And it turns out it's not a precursor artifact, but an artifact of the first humans, a group of free humans announcing that Eve will be their leader for their very own revolutionary war, as the game now officially rolls the credits for the proper time. So what do I think about the game overall? Well, I think the persona system is something amazing and should be in future Assassin's Creed games, but I mean in the modern day then you can't customize your looks as much, so that's completely out, because how would they get money on microtransactions if they can't do it that way? But I do very much wish other games would have adopted the persona system, as I think it's a unique enough thing to not be compared to Hitman, but to just give that Assassin's Creed feel a little bit something else, which may have helped the series in the coming 5 years after this game. Apart from that, the story, it's okay. It's a pretty basic assassin story for the most part. You're hunting down precursor side effects, you're keeping them out of the hands of the Templars, or trying your best to. Assassins usually fail at that part of the task. And at least for me, whilst I was playing the game, her mother being the company man, her stepmother being the company man wasn't that much of a surprise to me. The fact that she was the company man they were looking for was a surprise, but kind of pegged her as a Templar very early on into the game, just with some of the interactions between her, Aveline, and her husband / Aveline's father. But once again, like what I said with Assassin's Creed Syndicate, I love a classic assassin story. The RPGs, they're too complex, or they're not too complex, that's not what I mean, they're just not what I liked about the early Assassin's Creed games. But then again, I can also see how this game in particular is not for a lot of people. The parkour is just very janky at times, most likely due to its Vita connections. And even for its remaster remake, the game can look questionable during certain scenes, but outside of that, it can actually look really good for a Vita remaster. So, do I recommend that you check out Assassin's Creed Liberations HD? Well, if you played it on the Vita, I reckon it's worth checking out again to see how much it's changed. Like, I cannot comment on how much it's actually been remastered. All I can see is YouTube gameplay in 360p. If you are a fan of the Assassin's Creed linear games, I reckon it's definitely a check out. It sort of is its own isolated story, apart from that one mission with Connor, which if you cut out Connor, it still sort of makes sense. So it stands alone on its own for the most part. If you're a fan of the RPGs, I don't think this game's for you. But it's Assassin's Creed, so maybe check it out anyways. It's not like Aveline had a massive effect on the lore of Assassin's Creed. Like, these discs are not important, and I'm pretty sure we knew basically since Assassin's Creed 2 that Eve was the leader of the human revolution against the precursors, or the Atsus, or whatever they're called. But hey, maybe just check it out because a game's a game. Anyways, if you've enjoyed this, subscribe. It would be much appreciated, especially if you're still watching this now, almost half an hour later from the start of the video. I'll hopefully see you guys around in the next video. Let me know in the comments below if you've played Assassin's Creed Liberations HD. Let me know if you knew Assassin's Creed Liberations HD was even a thing. And I hope to see you in the next video. Peace.
Oh yeah, this is gonna be a lot of fun. Who the fuck wants to move boxes around all goddamn day?